I'd like to say good evening to each and every one of you. It is good that we are here in the house of the Lord to worship. I'm thankful that all of you are here with us. I know I don't normally say this on Sunday night, but if you're joining us through Facebook Live, we'd like to welcome you as well. We wanted to make sure that all 5 of these series of lessons were projected and were given so that you can follow along, and that if anybody could not be here for one reason or another, that they still had the opportunity to learn and to study with us. 2 things. First of which, before we get into our lesson, if you feel like on 2 verses of one song is going to wear the bass out, you really don't have that much of a bass crew. And I think we got a pretty good bass crew myself, so if you're going to wear us out, you're going to have to sing it all night long. Multiple songs, different keys. Then, maybe by the end of the night, if we don't sound like J.D. Sumner, we'll be doing all right. But I love that song. I absolutely love that song. Funny story about that song. I was leading one night at Holiday whenever I was in Cookeville. And I worshiped and worked with the Holiday congregation with Johnny Fox. And I absolutely loved that congregation and still do. They had me leading singing one night. And I was looking through the songbook and said, I'm going to do this. I like this. Holiday had a strong bass line as well. And we'll sing this. So I started out, oh, thou blessed rock of ages. And I heard crickets. No bass repeat. Whatever. Okay. So I kept on. Nothing. So then I was thinking, well, maybe I've got it pitched too low. So I, on the second verse, took it up an octave. And then once I did that, we sang through it. People started following along and everything else. By the end of the chorus on the second verse, Johnny Fox is sitting right where about Uncle Bobby's sitting. And Johnny looks at me and he goes like this. I'm like, good night, I'm already in the rafters, but okay. So I took it up a whole nother octave. After that, I sat down and Johnny got in the pulpit. He said, son, I just wanted to see if you could do it again. It's wonderful to have all of you here with us. The second thing before we get into our lesson is this. I want to address the little bitty baby elephant in the room. Bo is here. And we're thankful that the family can be back together to worship together. That is one of the greatest blessings that anyone can ever have. It is for a mother and a father, a husband and a wife to worship together. And then once you have your kids, to bring them to worship with you. That is a great blessing. We're thankful that Whitney and Bo are here with us. But with that being said, both Mac and Whitney respectfully ask that you kind of keep your distance. They're not going to be passing him around. No kissing, no hugging yet because of all the sickness and different things that are going around. They did want to come to worship. They wanted to be a part of worship. They're thankful that you want to love him as much as you do. Just hold off a little while longer. So keep that in mind as well. But other than that, we're thankful that all of you are here with us. I'm thankful for the reception of this morning's lesson. And tonight we're going to continue that as well. I appreciate Uncle Jack whenever he was leading, giving me a little bit more time. Whenever I started planning this lesson, I started putting the PowerPoint together last night. I had actually this morning's lesson and tonight's lesson combined, and it was going to be way too long if I did that, so we broke it up, and I think it's going to work out a little bit better this way. But I wanted to give us enough time to where we can still be able to get out, have supper if you've not had supper yet, get your chores done before school tomorrow, and that everybody's going to be on the same page. But tonight we will also again continue with our study on elders. Now again, we're going to have 5 series of lessons on this. Lesson 1 this morning, we talked about why do we need elders. Next week, we're going to be looking at the qualifications of elders, part 1 and part 2. Sunday morning, we're going to cover so many. Sunday night, we're going to cover so many. And then the next Sunday morning, we're going to go and to look at the family, the qualifications of the wife, the elder's wife, and then the children and how his family needs to be viewed. But tonight, and we look at lesson number 2 in this series, I want to talk about the desire of an elder. Now again, I want to reiterate the same way that I did this morning. I don't typically do this in my lessons and my PowerPoints. I like hearing the pages turn. I like seeing the Bibles open. I like seeing you study with me. But for the sake of time, I've put the scriptures in this PowerPoint so you can follow along. Everything that's in the PowerPoint is taken from the New King James Version unless otherwise noted, okay? So keep that up with me. If you want a copy of these notes and you did not get them this morning, there are some in the back. If you want a digital version of the PowerPoint or the notes, just text me, email me, and I'll be more than happy to pass them along to you. I want to give you all the information that you can possibly have to make a clear and concise decision on nominating who you think would be a good fit for an elder in this position. So, lesson number 2, when we desire, or the lesson of the desire of an elder. Come on in, Russell. You're not too late. It's okay. All right. This is taken from 1 Timothy chapter number 3, verse number 1. Now, when you look at the qualifications of an elder, you have 2 main passages that you refer to. 1 Timothy chapter number 3 and Titus chapter number 1. But when you're talking about this particular word, this desire, he that desires the office of a bishop, is only found in 1 Timothy chapter number 3. In 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse number 1, notice what it says right here. This is a faithful saying. This also is translated in some different versions, some different translation, as this is a true saying. This is a saying that you could count on, something like that. This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, and we talked about that a little bit this morning too, bishop and elder, overseer, shepherd, these are all interchangeable words for the same position. If a man desires the position or the office, in the King James Version, of a bishop, he desires a good work, okay? So we want to talk about the idea of the desire of an elder. When you're thinking about this, many people, when they're looking at the qualifications and they're trying to talk and to establish elders and things like that, they will look and they will say the desire of a bishop, the desire of an elder is the first qualification. Okay? They will teach this. If I don't desire the office of an elder, then I'm not qualified to be an elder, because that's the first qualification. This is false. This is false. Many people will teach this because they will say, oh, well, why would you put somebody in there that doesn't desire to be in there? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not going to hire somebody to do the job when they don't want to do the job. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But they want to say that this is a qualification. And then on the flip side of the coin, somebody who is nominated to be an elder, let's say that I was qualified, I had believing children, and I met all the qualifications, and someone nominated me for being an elder. While there are plenty of other qualities and qualifications that I have issues with, if I looked at them and I said, well, no, I can't be an elder because I don't desire it. I don't meet that first qualification. That's a false teaching. It's not right, okay? let's look at this. Consider the passage again in 1 Timothy 3, okay? Now, this is a longer reading because this is one of those things that in order to understand it, you've got to get all of it, okay? You can't just read verse 1 and say, oh, well, I understand it. You've got to get this. So, keep up with me, all right? Verse number 1. This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, apt to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are on the outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. These are the qualifications that you find in 1 Timothy chapter number 3. Titus reads very similarly, but they have some differences in Titus chapter number 1. Again, tonight's lesson is not about the qualifications. We're going to talk about the qualifications next Sunday. What tonight's lesson is about is the desire. Again, I told you this morning that I am no English scholar. I've never claimed to be an English scholar. I do numbers. There's a reason for that. I can't spell, and you don't want to see my notes. But when you're looking at this, I do understand what applies where. That's the reason that I've got the different colors highlighted within this passage. Notice this. Verse number 1. This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. Number 2. A bishop then must be. Do you see the change in the direction of where we're looking? Paul is writing to Timothy, and he's trying to instruct Timothy, look, you need to work on establishing elders in the congregations that you visit. The same way that he told Titus this morning. Okay? He's trying to look at both of these young preachers. He's trying to help them. He's trying to encourage them. He's trying to teach them. Look, this is what you've got to do. But in Timothy's case, Paul looks at Timothy and he starts out by saying, if a man desires the office of an elder, if a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be. You see the change in where he's looking. Verse number 1 applies to verse number 1. Verse number 2 applies to the rest of the passage. Do you see that? A bishop then must be. What must he be, Timothy? He must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, good behavior. He must be all of these things. But this word, these words, and this phrase does not look backward. It looks forward. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So to say that the qualifications of an elder starts with that he must have the desire to be an elder is false. So then why is that in there? Why would Paul to Timothy make such a big hassle in making sure that that wording was in there the way that it is? Well, it's because that if a man aspires to be an elder, if a man sets his heart to be an elder, I think that we really have done a disservice to a lot of our young people in the church. And what I mean by that is that we talk about different jobs in the church in such a manner that our young people don't ever think that they can live up to that standard. Here's an instance. We were talking about elders this morning, right? And I was talking about towards the end of the sermon about elders that I remember. And not that Papa's going anywhere, but I talked about Papa. I talked about Paul Bogle. I talked about Brackett Cantrell. I talked about Roy Wilson. And these were men that I have good memories. I have a fondness for these men, for what they did for this congregation. I also pulled a member aside as we were leaving, and I wanted to know their opinion on the lesson this morning. And they were kind of confused, and I said, well, here's the thing. Your grandfather was one of the best elders I've ever known in my life. And I want your opinion. Do you think that he would be okay with what I said? See, brother and sister friends, we've got elders that we think so much of. If you've been and you've worked with a congregation that's had elders, especially an elder that's passed on, you can think and you can recollect and they mean just so much to you. But we put these men on such high of a pedestal that the young men growing up are sitting there saying, well, there's no way I can do what he did. There's no way that I can accomplish or I can stand for what he did and I can do the things that he did. Look, the thing about it is, Roy Wilson, Paul Bogle, Brackett Cantrell, and Papa were the elders for their time. Out of the four men that I mentioned, only one of them's still with us. They can't be elders forever. As bad as I want my Papa to stay with me forever, reality tells me that's not going to happen. I love you. Don't go nowhere, okay? But when you're thinking about this, that generation had their eldership for the church that they worshiped at. If we don't train the young men to step up into that role, there won't be elders for the next generation. And we can't put them on such high of a pedestal that these young men won't think that they can't fill their shoes. Because, brother and sister friends, I guarantee you, if you talk to Papa the day that he was inducted as an elder, Paul Bogle, Brackett Cantrell, or Roy Wilson, that any one of them would have said that they didn't know it all and they knew a whole lot more at the end than they did at the beginning. Doing this is the same as preaching. Doing this is the same as teaching. Doing this is the same as growing as a Christian. You grow, you learn, you have experiences, you start to walk, and then you can run. See, brother and sister friends, I love how, and I told you, if any of you wants to check this out, you need to. If you need to go on YouTube, you need to watch it. But between Don Blackwell and Glenn Cawley, I love the way that they put this. They said that it's not a qualification, but a clarification on the office that the man is aspiring to be. It's not saying that if a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work, that he's doing this. It is a clarification. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, and I'm going to bring a point to it, but many people remember the poem that was very popular, and it resurfaced a couple of years ago in a Super Bowl commercial with Ram trucks. You remember the poem that Paul Harvey did, So God Made a Farmer? A lot of people love that, and I love that. I mean, every time I hear it, I get chills because I've heard it played at a national FFA convention in Indianapolis, Indiana, when every student there was wearing the same uniform, when every student there was silent. You could have heard a pin drop in a football field. And the only thing that you were hearing was Paul Harvey's voice of a recording, him saying that. But do you remember at the end, at the close of this, whenever the son looks at his father and he says that he wants to spend a life doing what his dad does. And then Paul Harvey closes it out and he says, so God made a farmer. See, brother and sister friends, to have a young man say, I want to be an elder, that's what we're talking about. To have a young man say, I want to keep the church going, I want to do my part, that's what we're talking about. Let's continue on and look at this right here. Let's explain it like this. And I got complimented on this today, and it made me, feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Let's explain this in pure, simple country boy English, okay? If a man just out and out approached you and said, I want to be an elder. Right now, we've made no secrets about it. We are starting the process of going through and nominating elders. Let's say I'm greeting people in the back, and on Sunday, hey, how you doing? It's good to see you. I've been missing you. You've been sick. It's good. Let's say somebody barges through there, and he just runs up to me, and he says, I want to be your next elder. What would you think?
Are you crazy?
I would think two things. Right off the bat, I would think two things. First of which, I would question if he was seeking power. There are men in the Lord's church that will use the office of a bishop, that will use the office of an elder to have power and to lord over that congregation. They look to that title to say that they are of somebody of importance. I am so-and-so, elder at Trousdale Church of Christ. To me, and I know it's a personal pet peeve. It's a personal pet peeve, okay? But when you go to these Friday night singings, we had a wonderful one at Arlington Friday night. Usually when you go to a Friday night singing, they will say, announce your name and your congregation where you attend. To me, it gets underneath me on Friday night whenever somebody will stand up and say, I'm Alan Northcutt, I'm the minister at Trousdale Church of Christ. You're a member. I'm a member. Just because I'm the preacher doesn't mean anything. I hold no office. I hold no title. I am in no form of authority. Okay? The elder who should receive the double honor rightly, if you get a good one when you talk to them, they're going to say that they are of no other higher rank than anybody else. Who are you? My name's Alan Northcutt. I attend at the Trousdale Church of Christ. And then they're going to walk off. Hey, he was one of the elders. He's been there a long time. They hold that man in reverence. Brother and sister friends, he's just a man. But there are some who would use that to seek power. It doesn't matter if a decision comes forward before the church that will benefit the church. If that decision didn't come from them, it ain't going to happen. That's wrong. Oh, well, it has to have the authority and the stamp and the seal of approval by the eldership. If it did not come through the eldership, we're not doing it. If a man just out and out said, I wanted to be an elder, that's the first thing that I would question. Is he seeking power? Is he wanting to be in this position to have a title, to feel like he's above everybody else? Here's my second observation. Is he crazy? And the reason I say that, and I say that in a joking manner, but there's a whole lot of truth to the joke. Why would anybody want to take on the stress? You know, it's something all the time. Why would anybody want to take on the sleepless nights? Why would anybody want to take on the worry, the decision making, and yes, the confrontation? People aren't confrontational. They don't like being in confrontation. They don't like staying up all night. They don't like worrying about somebody else. They don't like having a good day going and then all of a sudden somebody calls you with a bit of information and everything goes right out the window. They don't like doing that. Somebody that was wanting to come up and say, I want to be your next elder. You mean to tell me that you're wanting to deal with the sleepless nights? You're wanting to deal with the worry? You're wanting to go try and seek the lost sinner? You're wanting to go try and be confrontational with people? You're wanting to try to do what we talked about this morning? That is to look and determine what the Bible says, to make an educated decision about what the Bible says, and then to enforce the rules that's in the Bible. You're wanting to do this? See, somebody that would do this, that's the first two things that I would think of. Is he seeking power or is he crazy? One of the two. It would be very natural to be leery. Especially somebody that said that they had the desire, I want to be an elder. It would be very easy to be leery. But here's the thing. 1 Peter chapter number 5. Verses 1 through 4. Peter writes this and he says, the elders who are among you. Peter's writing to the church. And he says, the elders who are among you, I exhort, I who am a fellow elder. Peter's saying, I know what you're going through because I go through it too. I who am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed, shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly. Not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but by being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. Peter, who is an elder, made it clear more so than anything that you and I could say. He was talking to the elders, and he said this, serving as overseers, which we've talked about. You're shepherding over the flock. This is the flock of God at Trousdale, and we need a shepherd to keep the flock together, to make sure that the sheep are all going in the same direction. You are an overseer, not by compulsion, but willingly. Again, that's that thought that we talked about saying, well, why would you put anybody into the office that didn't want it? Well, brother and sister friends, if you looked at what all went into the office of an elder, I can't see why anybody would want it. But Peter explained it like this. Not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, not being lords over those entrusted to you, but being an example to the flock. It means this, that you, the elder, okay, if you are a man in the congregation, right? Men, I want you to think about this. Ladies, I want you to think about your husbands, because we're talking about the eldership, right? We're going to get to the ladies on the last Sunday of the month, but right now we're still talking about the men. If you are a man, I want you to put yourself in this position of an elder. Now don't be saying, oh, well, I'm not qualified because I don't have this or I don't have that. You stick with me, okay? You're put in that position of an elder. Do you want to see the church succeed and grow? Yes. Anybody should want to say that. I have the desire to make sure that the church keeps going. I have the desire to make sure that the church succeeds. I have the desire to make sure that the church grows. I don't have the desire to go and to do all these other things that come along with the eldership. See, that's where I'm saying that we've done a disservice. We focus all on the negative things, and we don't focus on the things that are desirable for an elder. What does the elder desire? The elder desires to see the church succeed and to grow. If a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. If a man desires to see the church grow, if a man desires to see the church succeed, then he desires a good thing. He wants what's best for the church. Somebody who wants what's best for the church would be a good fit in this position of an elder. You see how I told you that there are two different qualifications? That this is a clarification, not a qualification. A bishop then must be, and then you get into the qualifications. You look. If a man wants to see the best for the church, if the man wants to see the church succeed and to grow, then he would be a good fit. Does he meet all of these qualifications? Do you see how that builds on one another? It's not just all lumped together and you just read it. Oh, if a man desires the office of bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless. The husband and woman, It's not just all jumbled together. It's written the way it's written for a reason. When you see a man that wants to see the church succeed, when you see a man that wants to see the church grow, when you see a man that wants the best for the church, he would make a good bishop. He would make a good elder. An elder then must meet these qualifications. Do you see how that builds on one another? Literally in the Greek, in 1 Peter chapter number 5, it reads to reach toward or to push toward the best. If you have an opportunity to watch those videos, Glenn Colley says that in his pocket he keeps a pocket knife. Well, I don't know that I'd trust anybody that didn't have a pocket knife in their pocket, man or woman. But anyway, that's just the family that I grew up in. I'm sorry. When you're looking at this, Glenn Colley said that he keeps a knife in his pocket if he just was to pass by an apple tree. If he passed by an apple tree, he's not going to grab an apple off the bottom, one that's just real easy to get. Why? Because it's probably rotten. It's got worms in it. It's no good. No, you're going to reach into the top of the tree and get one that doesn't have all these things in it. Is it going to be easy? No. But will you be rewarded for it? Yes, it'll be a better apple. Brother and sister friends, if we just want to keep muddling around on our daily lives and we want to pick up apples off the ground, that's fine. But you're not going to get a good quality of apple. If you get a man that is willing to reach to get the best of what he can get, to push the church to move forward, to see that the church is growing, to see that the church is succeeding, to see that it is doing right, and he wants what's best, and he's willing to reach and work for it, that's an elder. 1 Peter chapter number 5, verse number 2, it says, not by compulsion, but willingly, means not by constraint or by force. To say, boy, I tell you what, you'd be a good elder, and we're going to put you in the office of an elder. No. It's not being forced upon them. They're not being chained to the office. It's because he wants what's best for it. Yes, I'm willing to put up with the sleepless nights. I'm willing to put up with the worry. I'm willing to put up with the hard decisions that's got to be made. I'm willing to put up with the confrontation. Why? Because I want to see the church succeed. I want to see the church grow. I want a good, sound, solid congregation for my kids, for my grandkids, for my family that's going to follow after me. I want to make sure that the church is here for generations to follow. And that means I have to have strong elders today. To desire the office of a bishop or to desire the position of an elder is a good thing. It never needs to be discouraged. It is a good thing. Now, here I'm going to explain this a step further. Y'all with me or you asleep?
Come on, brother.
When you're thinking about this, let's look at it this way. When we read of Jesus praying in the garden, you know what I'm talking about. When Jesus goes in there and he starts praying and the drops of blood come from his brow, and this is the night before, it's right before he's fixing to be betrayed and then crucified. You know the story I'm talking about, right? Because if not, we'll go back and we'll read it, but that's going to be a long reading. Matthew chapter number 26 and verse number 39, and Luke chapter 22 and verse number 42, you see both of the very similar sentences, both of very similar statements being made. Let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. You know what I'm talking about? You remember that passage? Do you ever think that Jesus wanted to go through with everything in this manner? Jesus was human.
Amen.
Now, we often think about Jesus being the Son of God and He's deity. Yes, He is. But while He was here on earth, He was human. He was flesh and bone, and He had fears like you and I have fears. He was tempted. Brother and sister friends, at this point in time, He's saying, man, if I don't have to go through with it like this, don't make me go through with it. He knew the death that He was fixing to endure. There's a reason that the Bible says He endured death, even the death of the cross. There's a reason that it says even the death of the cross. Because that was such a gruesome and horrifying death that it was one that only needed to be applied to Jesus. When you're looking at this, how He was going to go through the trial when they wrongly accused Him, when they smacked Him around, when they spat on His face, when they crowned Him with the crown of thorns. And not only when they crowned Him with the crown of thorns, they shoved it on His head, they took a rod, they beat Him with it, they smacked the crown of thorns in there. Then they took Him out in the streets, they scourged Him with a cat of nine tails, ripped flesh from bone. Going through this, then they give Him the cross and they said, carry it up that hill right there. And He drags it. And then once He gets up there, they lay it on the ground. They put Him on top of it. They drive the nails through His hands and His feet. And then they put Him on it, stand Him up, and then they just wait. They don't just automatically kill Him. They wait for Him to die. Do you understand what all He went through for you and for me? But yet right here in the garden, He's saying, if I don't have to go through with this, I don't want to go through with this. Nevertheless, it's not what I want. It's what you need to be done. Not my will, but thy will be done. Think about this. Jesus did this because He wanted what was best. He endured the worst part of life because He wanted what was best for you and for me. Is a man that wants to see the church succeed. Does a man that wants to see the church grow. Does a man that wants to see what is best for the church, is he willing to put up with all the other because he wants to see what is best for the church done? If a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. So what does an elder desire? We've been talking about this all night. What does an elder desire? I'm going to submit to you that he desires the same thing that Jesus desired and prayed for. Right here in John chapter 17. This would be the Lord's Prayer. I do not pray for these alone, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they all may be one. As you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me, and the glory which you gave me I have given them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. What does Jesus desire? He desires unity. Jesus only died for one church. Jesus only established one church. And Jesus only wants one church. But let me explain something else to you. He too wants unity. And right here in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse number 10, Paul writes this. He says, I plead with you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. Is that not what an elder does? An elder wants unity. The elder is there to make sure that the church is speaking the same thing. If it's not found in the Bible, it's not going to be taught here. If it is found in the Bible, it will be taught here. Brother and sister friends, and that there be no divisions among you. If there starts to be a quarrel between members, if there starts to be a division in the church, the elders are there to stomp out that fire and to make sure that what is in the Bible is being taught. But that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. We are going to look at what the Bible says. We're going to speak where the Bible speaks. We're going to be silent where the Bible's silent. And we're going to do what the Bible says. The elder is there to make sure that that's what happens. Does this make sense? Jesus prayed for unity. The elder wants the same unity. So when we conclude this, the desire of an elder, what have we learned here tonight? Well, we've learned that he desires unity between God and the church because he loves God and that he wants what's best for the church. We've learned that he does not do this to gain power or control, but because he wants to see the church succeed and grow. And we've learned that it is not a qualification, but rather a clarification on his ambitions for the church. I want what's best for the church. Therefore, I desire the office of a bishop. That's the conclusion lesson number 2.